met a stranger at a grocery store one day, and we were pinching pennies a little bit for formula at one point in my life, and she looked at me. She didn't ask for anything. She just said that it looked like I needed a hug. An older lady, could have been around my mother's age, but a little bit older. And that hug did a lot for me. Because somebody saw me. They saw the struggle. They didn't need the story. They didn't need the explanation. And so to every single one of those people, like, I am eternally grateful.
Welcome everyone to Look Both Ways, where we explore the real stories of women who've built remarkable careers all while raising children. Today we sit down with Midori Charles, a Marine Corps veteran turned geospatial and imagery analyst now based in the Kansas City area. Midori grew up in Glendale, California, and spent years moving around the country through both her own military service and her spouse's. Professionally, she specializes in geospatial intelligence and business management. Personally, she's a mom of two, and when she's not working or running her kids to soccer as their unofficial Uber driver, she's an equestrian, a self-proclaimed professional karaoke singer in true Filipino fashion, and a devoted Harry Potter enthusiast. Welcome, Midori.
Thank you so much, Jenna, for having me. It is a true honor and pleasure to work with you, and thank you so much for reaching out and asking me to share my story.
Absolutely. So you grew up in Glendale, California. What was your childhood like?
It was very hectic in a sense that my father was also in the Marine Corps, and my mother, she worked a lot. They had me when they were young, and so I was very blessed to have a system where my grandparents took care of me, my aunts and uncles took care of me, and my siblings as well. And so it was full of love, very traditionally full of love, even though it was very busy.
So both of your parents worked full time and lots of family around. What was your vision of what you wanted to be when you grew up? What did you dream of?
Oh gosh, I guess because of growing up in the greater Los Angeles area, everybody goes through the wants to be famous, to, walk that red carpet, picture yourself getting an Oscar and things like that. But my wants on what I wanted to be when I grew up went from being famous to being an astronomer, because I really loved space stuff, and that kind of, I guess, ties into what I do now. But then my grandfather, when he was still alive, used to tell me that I should be a professional arguer because I was very stubborn and hard-headed. And so for a very long period of time, I did want to become a lawyer. So I want to say my junior or senior year is when it changed just a little bit.
So interesting. I feel like a lot of the women I've interviewed so far have had this kind of deconstructed view of family and parenthood, right? Because it's not common anymore for people to have their aunts and their uncles and their grandparents nearby and in this ecosystem. Did you feel like you had these kind of layers of family support growing up, as opposed to the more modern two-parent, nobody else situation many are in?
Oh, gosh, I don't want to say it's unique to my family in particular, and I know it's more of a cultural thing, but I am a first-gen American, so both of my parents immigrated over when they were very young, and so they don't know anything outside of, the familial help where it takes a village, right? And so we were very lucky in that aspect, primarily on my mother's side, just because they were closer in regards to travel distance. Not that my dad's family didn't help when they could. It was just more convenient while my mom was going back to college and working, and my dad was also working. But you're not incorrect, because right now that's kind of what we're experiencing, because we have absolutely no family at all. I've been by myself since I became a mom.
Yeah. So definitely not the situation you grew up in terms of family support.
Correct.
Yeah. Did you imagine yourself having kids when you were growing up? Did you always want a big family, or what was your vision of yourself in adulthood like?
It's very complicated because it ebbs and flows. My maternal grandmother was one of somewhere between 10 or 11, something like that. So we grew up with a very big family, which is why, like I said previously, it was easier just to be with that side because there were so many more individuals that were able to offer their time when my parents needed it here and there. And so I had anticipated that I would have maybe 2 or 3 kids, that we maybe would grow up in the greater Los Angeles area or even in the San Diego area. And then I hit a portion in my life when I was in my early 20s, got out of a bad relationship. And I thought, that's it. I'm not having any kids. I'm never going to get married. I don't want to do this. I'm just going to be by myself till the end of time, until maybe I'm in my late 30s and fall in love in some foreign country somewhere.
Yeah. Okay. Hot pause, because I feel like if I hear anybody say, I'm going to be fine alone, it's usually a horse girl. Am I wrong?
It is always a horse girl that says, I will do this on my own.
You know, like I really do feel like the joy that we get from horses, you're my second equestrian mom I've had on so far, but I do feel like the joy we get from horses is only second to maybe love, spousal love. But I feel like most women that are like, I can do this on my own, are usually stubborn ass horse girls.
Oh, all the time you sit there and you say, I don't need you. I have a gelding at the barn. He knows me. He loves me. He doesn't ask me for anything.
Yeah.
And he's perfect.
Exactly. And the geldings don't talk back often. I mean, mare people, I don't know what mare people think. I don't know if mares would be enough to not have a life. So it seems like a complicated dynamic to have a mare. But anyways, back to the normal conversation. Hopefully the equestrians listening enjoy my horse rants. How did your parents approach work and family, and did it seem like they were flowing seamlessly because there was family around, or what did you observe in your parents both working full-time and raising kids?
Oh gosh, it was a lot. They were exhausted. And because the time in our lives when we were really young, it was just my sister and I, as my brother is a decade younger than I am. And there were so many nights where it was just one parent or the other. And it's not because they didn't want to be around, as they didn't let excuses run their life. So my mom would work during the day and then do night classes and things like that, which is when my mom's older sister, when she was still alive, she would take care of me. And then if we needed to, we would go to the grandparents for a little while. And then when my maternal grandfather died, we would spend more weeks at a time, especially in the summer, at my paternal grandparents' house, just to give my parents sort of a reprieve. But my dad was gone in the evenings working, and so we weren't lock and key kids, which I appreciated. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but they tried their best to make sure that we weren't alone. But it was hard watching my parents struggle, and it was difficult because I know that they weren't spending the time that they wanted to together, but they understood that they had kids and responsibilities. And so I appreciate them showing me and teaching me about all that hard work.
So they were juggling, and it was clear they were juggling, but they were making it work, and you had lots of people around that loved you, which is incredible.
Correct. And they did their best to not complain. You knew that they were tired. You knew that maybe the money wasn't there, and they would do everything that they could to get us what we wanted. But I don't know if it's just unique to my sister and I, or maybe just the generational construct, but because we were observant and we paid attention, we never really asked for much because we didn't know if they had the money for it. And so whatever we received, we were happy with, and we went about our day.
That's amazing. It's a great perspective. At 18, you decided to join the military. Tell me about that.
Oh, it was a complicated decision. I submitted college applications, and that was kind of when the reality hit where my parents made good money by the time I was in high school. My mom does come from a very wealthy family, but she's not one to ask, and so she likes to be one that is self-made. And we were talking about applications and grants, and she looked at me and goes, "We are California poor." And I'm like, "I don't know what that means." She's like, "I make a lot of money to where we don't qualify for any grants, but I make just enough for us to stay here and live here." And with that realization, and then the market crash of 2007, 2008, like all of that, it hit me really hard because I was in, I want to say like an AP Econ class my junior year, something like that, where I got to really understand the ways of the government and how the student loan debt was number one for all Americans. And I looked at my siblings and I was like, gosh, they've still got two more mouths to feed, right? And so that's kind of where I took a step back, and instead of going to law school because I was calculating how much money I was going to owe and when I could possibly pay it off in the event I was going to get a job, and what if I didn't get a job. And I was like, you know what? My dad's always loved the Marine Corps. He's never said a bad thing about it. His older brother was in the Marine Corps. His stepdad was in the Marine Corps. His biological father was in the Navy. And it seemed to just make sense because the discipline was already there. The work ethic was already there. And I signed the papers. And I will say, out of all the people, my dad was pissed. I came home with that recruiter. I was 18 years old and he was upset.
Oh, he did not want you to join the Marines.
Correct. He was scared. He was very scared because if I was his son, I think it would have been easier for him to swallow because
Yeah.
he is from that older generation. But because I'm his firstborn daughter, going into, and yes, I'm biased, but the hardest branch of service there is, especially for the women and how hard we get pushed physically, mentally, emotionally, he was very worried for me. And so he didn't know how else to express his worry other than being upset.
Yeah. So 18, you join the Marines. What is that like? Do you start with a camp? I don't know how it works. What was it like?
Yep. So you go to the recruiter's office, they say, hey, take a test called the ASVAB. So they look at your skill sets. And depending on your skill sets, of course, the higher you score, the more options you have as far as jobs are concerned. Fortunately, I scored really well. So any job that I wanted that had an opportunity for me to attend a class, because they only have a certain amount of numbers, quotas to fill, if you will, per region, and within the time frame that I wanted to go to boot camp. So I guess reverting back to the lawyer thing, I signed up to do paralegal work. And I was like, hey, I can do this. I scored high enough for it, went to boot camp. It's a 13-week evolution, which is the Marine Corps. It has the longest boot camp out of all of the military branches. And they do it in 3 phases. And the first night I was there, and you will probably laugh at it, the first night I was there, I was the lucky one that they picked. Like, hey, we need somebody to sweep the floors. You and you, come here, sweep the floor as everybody's getting ready for bed. Wasn't a big deal. Was not a big task, except for the fact I have never swept before.
Oh,
I have
no.
never so used to push brooms. Yeah, I've seen them. I saw them at church, never used it. I vacuumed, my sister would sweep the front porch, and I got lit up like a Christmas tree for being 18 years old and not knowing how to use a push broom, which in hindsight I understand because it seems so silly. But
Sure.
in the best ways, they reshaped a lot of how I was thinking. And a lot of the girls that I went to boot camp with, one of them, she met me and 4 other Pacific Islanders, and she said that she grew up in a small town in Michigan, and the only Asians that they would see were Vietnamese, and she had never seen any Islanders before. And so it was a very interesting experience because outside of the LA bubble, I did not realize how closed off I was and what I thought I knew versus what I'm learning. It was so different. And so that transition hit very hard, but it was very necessary in those 13 weeks.
Gotcha. So you worked as a paralegal for how long?
I didn't get to. And so the reason why I didn't get to is because I know that this isn't necessarily common knowledge for people who aren't involved in the military, but you have boot camp and then you have a combat training school that all Marines go to, male and female. The only difference is that if you do a specialty, if you're infantry or things like that, your training, of course, is more intense, and it's because of the survival methods that they need to learn versus everybody else where it's just overall combat training. So you do that, and then after that you're supposed to go to a military occupational school. And so as we graduated from that combat training course, it was snowing, and it was snowing so bad in North Carolina and all up the East Coast that they weren't even taking flights into Rhode Island. And Rhode Island was where I was supposed to go for paralegal work. And so I got cut there, got sent into admin stuff because it was just the next camp over. So unfortunately, I didn't get to do any paralegal work my first enlistment, but I did get to learn a lot more about the administrative portions and how the Marine Corps operates and how pay works and all these other intricate details that I, in hindsight, am very grateful for because it has helped tremendously on the corporate side of things. But then when I re-enlisted, it's called a lateral move because you're able to change your job one time because some people don't get a choice. So that's when I tested, because you have to test to do imagery analysis and work with geospatial intelligence. So I took that exam, I passed it. They said, "Hey, do you want to change your job?" I said, "Yes, please." And so they sent me to DC to go to school at the NGA, and I've been fortunate that I had a fantastic career. Truly, I appreciated every single one of the leadership that I had because they understood, and I respect them so much for it.
It's amazing. So, what is imagery analysis?
Sometimes I don't even know. But, so you work. I appreciate the geospatial field because it's constantly changing, and I like that my brain is always being stimulated because I don't like sitting stagnant. You get raised in the military with this idea that complacency kills, and it applies to a lot of aspects of life. And I truly believe that when you're complacent, you don't really pay attention to the things that you should be paying attention to or that could help you in the long run. And so, with that, doing imagery analysis, I get to work with satellite imagery, drone imagery, things like that. And when I was in the Marine Corps, we would do surveillance, if you will. So I learned how to track submarines and then look at aircrafts and things like that and be able to read them based off of a SAR image. SAR is synthetic aperture radar, so it's what you utilize to get through cloud coverage, to look into the oceans and things like that for bathymetry and, not to get too much into the weeds of things, but essentially that's what it is. Read license plates, things like that. But that's, of course, on like I say high side, but the more government intelligence side of things, whereas now, even though I still work for the government, it's not as intense. In a nutshell, that's what I do.
It's such a neat job. Something that you don't necessarily know exists, I think, as you're growing up, would you say?
No, God, no. I can even there's so many cool things that you can do with it, even soil detection, right? So you're talking about things here. I could take images, run them through something, and the color return would tell me what kind of soil it is and what crops it's good for and things like that. It's really awesome. I've always thought it was one of the coolest things that I could have done.
That's so interesting. I feel like if you ever go on Career Ladder, he's not going to be able to guess what you do. Have you seen that guy on social media?
No.
He has 2 minutes to guess what anybody does, and he can ask any question. And most of the time he can get it, but I feel like yours is one that he wouldn't get.
Oh, that sounds like it would be a lot of fun.
It's pretty fun to watch. So you rose quickly and became the first female superior for an infantry unit. What was that like? What did stepping into that role feel like?
We were at a battle simulation center, and it's not that I was in charge of a unit, but I had infantry individuals that were under my charge. And so it's a little complicated when it comes to that. And so they call it a TAD, so temporary assigned duty. So I had infantrymen that were temporarily assigned to me, and it was the first time I'd ever dealt with them in a professional space. Not that I didn't work with them or give them briefs, but it was the first time that I was trying to take care of them. And I emphasize the word trying. Because these men, I mean, they had been through the ringer. A lot of them, unfortunately, were with units that didn't have a good outcome when they were deployed in 2009, 2010. A lot of the individuals with those units did not come back. And so the Marines that I had the war experience, lost a lot of friends, and we call it salty. The term is salty, not necessarily with me, but just in the grand scheme of things. And some of them had survivor's guilt. So that was a challenge for me. Even though I had deployed before, I will never know what it's like. And I'm not going to pretend that I know what it's like, but I cried every day I came home. I cried. My best friend at the time, she was my roommate. She's like, "How's work?" I'm like, "It sucked." And it wasn't because they were incompetent. It was just gaining their respect was the most difficult thing that I had to do. And not that they didn't respect me as a person. It was, "Hey, I understand you did this with your career, but I did this with mine. And at the end of the day, it's not comparable."
Right.
And all I wanted to do was be like, "Hey guys," I'm like, "I'm here to run a show. I need you at this time. We need to work out every day from this time to this time, do our work, and then you guys can go home." But that tried every bit of patience that I had. The adversity, not from anything else other than I didn't understand what it was like to be in the literal trenches with them. was hard, one of the most difficult points in my career.
Yeah.
And because of that, and I was, what, 22, 23 at the time, which in the grand scheme of things, it does not seem like I'm very young, but for the Marine Corps and being a sergeant and being that age, I was mature, and most people are, and so you hold the Marines to a very, very high standard, because at 23 years old, you have people running platoons and gunfire and things like that. That's the expectation, right? So I'm in this room with all these individuals, and unfortunately, in that time of my life, one of the individuals I worked with decided to take his own life because he was having such survivor's guilt, which also pushed me further into an abyss of what the heck am I doing? I'm like, can I even do this anymore? Because I thought that I had such a fruitful career. I thought that I was great. Not that I wasn't, and I don't say that to be self-serving, but I like to talk shit but prove it. Like I won't say something if I can't back it up. And I don't
Yeah.
like to just talk to hear myself talk. It's just I see things in a certain way, and I'd like to think that I try my best to do what's right by people, not necessarily just an organization, but I want to do what's right by you. And I felt like I failed, and I'd gone through therapy. I'd gone through all these things, and I tried to be an advocate. And I went to classes to be advocates for uniformed individuals, but that was the worst. It was one of the best experiences working with these men, but also the worst because I didn't know how to handle it. And so
Well,
that was really shitty.
is there anything you could have done, right? It's life and death, heavy burdens.
I that I was told that often, that like, hey, you did everything that you could, and I'm not saying that I didn't try. I tried everything. I made sure that people would check it on this individual at his house, see where he was. I knew that he was drinking often, but he was also out processing from the military, and so they call it an EAS, end of service, if you will. So he was just waiting to get separated. Understandably, when the Marines, they say dropping their pack, so essentially senioritis, if you will, just for Marines that are leaving within a 6-month period. He just wanted to go home, and I don't know what demons he had, but there was only so much that we could do. And it wasn't fair of me to ask other Marines to go check on him on a daily basis, or, a couple times a day when he wouldn't come up to the office. And that was the part that I struggled with the most, is that I can only do so much because I have to take care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And so that was the hardest pill to swallow, is because of the decision I made. And I'm not saying that's why he did it. Like I truly believe that he had already made his mind up about it, and there was nothing I could do to change it. But it took me a very long time and several years to be okay with the decisions that I made.
Yeah. It's a lot. So, next in your story came a knee injury, correct? Tell me about that.
Yeah. Yes. So I had 2 knee surgeries. The first one was when I was at this simulation center. It's on Camp Del Mar, which is at the beach, and you would run the hills and things like that and all the sand dunes. We were running down one of the hills, and the way that I landed, my knee tweaked a little bit, ended up tearing my meniscus, so I had a meniscal debridement. That was fine, recovered, got stationed on Camp Lejeune, which is on the East Coast in North Carolina, and I was an instructor at corporal's course. So it's a leadership course, and when you hit the rank of E4 in the Marine Corps, you are considered a non-commissioned officer, and so it's a non-commissioned officer leaders course. And I was there, and you have the training days and things like that you go through. And during the training days, I want to say maybe a couple days, if not a week before graduation, we'd run them through an obstacle course. And so this endurance course is anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. And because of where it is in North Carolina, there's a lot of brackish water. And you can't tell with the tide if it's going to be really high or it's going to be really low. It just depends, and you get what you get, right? And so the instructors run it in the morning, not a big deal. And then when the students get there, we run it again with the students. Well, the second time I ran through it that day with my students, I was in the front because you have an instructor in the front and in the back for safety purposes. And then you have to also think we have a lot of water moccasins and all the spiders that are out there. And God forbid, just because of all the wildlife, because you're in the woods. I jumped into brackish water because I had assumed that it was still high enough and it was fine. Where I say high enough, but I should have said low enough. I apologize. I thought it was still low enough that I could jump on it and still see what was underneath it. And then when I did jump in that time, the water level rose just a little bit, and I miscalculated because I couldn't see, and I landed on a tree root, and I
Oof.
snapped something. I could not stand up. And yeah, I looked at one of my students, and then he looked at me, and you could see that I was trying to hold back tears. And then I looked up, I was like, call for the doc. And so they yelled. The doc came in, he carried me. They took me in the van back. They had me go to the battle aid station. So it's kind of like our own personal medical care outside of the hospital just to evaluate it. They told me to go to the hospital, got an appointment within a couple days. And then I found out I tore my ACL, my MCL, and then I needed an MPFL replacement, and I dislocated my kneecap. And so I ended up getting surgery to do all of that maybe 3 or 4 weeks after the incident. And that's what fast tracked me on medical retirement.
So 3 or 4 weeks you had to live with that before it was operated on. And then medical retirement, but you had a desk job, right?
Yes. So I had a desk job, but it doesn't matter. So with living with that, I did have a brace. I was on crutches. I walked on it a little bit, but it was just so swollen. And so I went from the active instructor to an academics chief, which was fine. Like, I usually can write things out fairly well. And so I helped out on that aspect before I got sent back to my, they say parent command. So where I belonged to initially doing imagery stuff, I went back there. But even though it is a desk job, the way that the Marine Corps operates, and I can't speak for all military services, but it's an assumption, you have to be able to keep within physical standards. It doesn't matter what you do. So your admin guys, your finance guys should be able to pick up a rifle if needed and do whatever you were trained to do. It's just, this is how you help the Marine Corps operate, and make it work, is this is this job. But push comes to shove, you are a warrior first, is what they always say, right? You're a rifleman first. But because you have to keep within the physical standards, and we have semi-annual physical testing, you can only miss certain physical testing, I want to say up to 3 times before you get put on a medical board for
Okay.
evaluation.
Makes sense. At what point in time did you meet your spouse?
He and I deployed together we were in Bahrain together. We deployed on the Mu together. We were just friends at the time. We each had different love interests then. And then when I was on Camp Lejeune, I had a Mini Cooper. And I was backing my car up. And mind you, I hadn't seen this man since maybe circa 2012, something like that. And all I hear is a big smack on the roof of my car. And I was irritated. I'm tired. I was on duty all night. I was in stupid Charlies. Charlies are, I wouldn't say an uncomfortable outfit, but they're itchy. So it's like a dressier uniform, and I didn't want to wear it because we had to start wearing them on Fridays, and I thought it was dumb. It's just all these things. I'm complaining because I'm hungry and I want coffee. And so I'm like, ugh, put my car in parks, swing open the door, and I'm like, who the hell? And I look at him. He's like, you almost killed me. And he's yelling at me. And I stood up with an attitude on my face. And then I was like, Brandon? And he looked at me, and then immediately his demeanor changed. He was like, hi, gave me a hug. And I didn't know that he was also with his friend, but his friend was so pissed off that he didn't continue yelling at me that the friend just kind of walked away like, I can't believe that you just, it's not cool. She almost hit us. And he goes, you didn't see us? I'm like, no. I was like, I turned around, I didn't see anybody, and I backed up. He's like, your whole car is a window. How did you not see us? But that's how we essentially got reconnected. He saw me, and we started hanging out just to go over things because we were sergeants at the same time together at one point, and we ended up being friends, and it blossomed into something else X amount of years later, and here we are. But he likes to
Gotcha.
tell everybody that I tried to kill him, and that's the only reason why.
It's a great story to tell. So, at the time of your knee injury, were you and Brandon already together?
Yeah, we were really good friends. We were old friends, but he did help a lot in that time frame. He took care of me. He would help me in and out of bed if I needed to. And it was the first time that I had seen his kindness, if that makes, not that he wasn't kind before, but it was just the different side of him that I had never seen before. Because I knew the silly, crazy, colorful him, the friend side of him. And in that moment, I was like, I'm going to marry you.
I love that. When did you find out you were pregnant?
Like 2 weeks after. my
Okay.
surgery. That wasn't the reason why I wanted to marry Brandon, and I know that probably sounds really crazy, but I never wanted to get married just because I had a kid. Don't care. I do not care. Maybe it's the horse girl in me, but I will take care of me and my baby, and you can go kick rocks. I don't give a shit. And I refused. I refused to do any of that. And then Scott was born, and there we were. But yeah, no, I found out I was pregnant while I was recovering. And I will say that was a huge detriment. Not the baby, but physically, that was the detriment for my knee recovery. And that was the main reason why I ended up getting medically retired, was because my body could not heal itself and form a baby. And I understood that you know what I mean? My body is like, baby comes first. So all the nutrients to baby keep baby healthy. But because of that, my 3 to 6 month recovery was pushed so far out that I was in a leg brace. I had crutches. Even when I was pregnant, I was a huge fall risk. I had tripped 3 different times while I was 7 months pregnant, and my belly was huge. And at that point, even the people in my office were like, just stay here, don't do anything, don't go anywhere, because they knew. And they were wonderful. I will say that the Marine Corps, because everybody gets voluntarily ripped away from family, and I say voluntarily because the Marine Corps doesn't draft, right? You wanted to do it. But because of that, we formed such a great family. They would drive me to my physical therapy appointments. They would wait for me. They would help if I needed food and I felt too sick to drive. They would go get it for me. It's weird because you don't have blood family near you, but while I was in and out processing, you know, my green family there, they were fantastic. And so it was just a lot. It was a lot to go through. I was such a wreck.
So there you are with a new baby, knees coming back together. What was that next chapter like?
Awful. It was the one of the worst parts of my life. Can't tell you how many nights I cried myself to sleep. And it's not because I hated my child. It's not because I hated my situation. It's because I was so lost. I was dealing with depression and things like that already, trying to work through all of those things. And then going from 100,000 miles an hour to just a hard stop because I didn't have a choice. And my career didn't end the way that I wanted to on my terms. And then looking at this child who I am the only thing, you know, that he wants in the world, and I wanted to be alone. I just wanted to be left by myself, and that was the hardest struggle that I dealt with. And I didn't know what was happening. I was screaming and crying. The thoughts of suicide like crept up more often than I care to admit. I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't want to eat. I barely wanted to take care of myself, and I did. I forced myself to do it because of my son, but my mom was 3,000 miles away. Hell, she came in when he was 2 weeks old. She was there for maybe a week and a half. And he shit all over my comforters. Like, all I was doing was changing his diaper because he had just done it. You know, it was full, changed it, was putting on a onesie. But as soon as I attempted to close the diaper, exploded everywhere. And I just screamed and I couldn't hold it. I was trying. I was so tired. My mom ran into my room, swung the door open. And I know that might not seem odd, but it's my mother. My mom is very well mannered. Even though I'm her daughter, she's always knocked on the door to ask permission to come in. But she swung that door open like something fierce because she thought something was wrong, and I just couldn't stop crying. And at that point, I think she realized how exhausted I was because I was by myself. And it's not that Brandon was that he was working. You know, he has to leave at 5 in the morning and doesn't come back until 5:30, 6 o'clock because of the drive back home from base. And 5:30 in the morning because he has to do PT, right? And so he's just got a full day. And she looked at me, sighed. She's like, give me the baby. I'll wash the baby. She's like, clean your bed sheets, take a shower, and go to bed. Was still crying. And I was like, okay. You know, could
Yeah.
not get a breath in because I was in such a shit mood. I fell asleep and I woke up. I had slept for almost a full day. Didn't even realize it because I was so tired. And that is the moment that I was like, oh my God, this is why you need a village. It's like, this is why it matters. This is why military spouses, like, they get so frustrated and they feel so lonely and then they complain all the time. It's not because they don't love their spouse. It's not because they don't love the military lifestyle. It's that sometimes you just can't do it anymore. And I was only in it for such a short amount of time when that realization hit of, oh my God. Because I'm not going to lie, when I was on active duty, it was just, it's a certain type of guy. And he would always complain about his wife. My wife doesn't do anything. All she does is just stay home. She's with the kids. She doesn't do anything all day. And it was in that moment, I'm like, she does do everything. She's just so goddamn tired. She's tired because she's got your kids. She's got to clean them. She's got to feed them. She's got to do the goddamn laundry. She's got to do all these things. And you come home and, you're bitching about something else and you don't realize how worn out your wife is so that you can continue to do the career that you love. She up and left for you. And that was like my realization of, and I had the nerve at one point in my life to also talk shit about these women. Look at you. Look at what you're doing. How dare you talk shit about those women? And so after that, I like the astronomical amount of respect I have for stay-at-home moms. It's through you cannot convince me that there is a more difficult job than staying home with your kids and trying to keep the household together because you can't afford daycare or you can't afford to do anything or you have no other option. And I get it. It feels like a jail cell. I get it. But that's what it was. I was so damn depressed. Like the first 2 years of being a stay-at-home mom. I hated it.
Yeah. There's nothing that quite prepares you for that season. The sleep deprivation, the mental components. I can't even imagine doing it without a spouse around because even with a spouse, it was gnarly. How did you get past that season? How did you get through it?
Spite. The reason why I say I survived out of spite is because sometimes I'd go visit because Bray and I got married right before Scott turned 1. And I did that purposefully because I wanted my entire family to meet my child, and I wanted his first birthday as my second one's also. I wanted my family to be there for his first birthday. That meant a lot to me. And so the chatter, as far as the survival goes, I went back to California when Scott was maybe 7 months old or something like that for a bridal shower. And I was already out of the Marine Corps at this time, trying to work with everything. And my dad had the baby because it was, just the girls. My bridal party set it all up. And when I got home, there were some of the elders, if you will, and then their kids, so like my aunts and uncles, that they were talking to my dad, meeting the baby, but I don't think that they realized that I was there. And there was somebody who had said something, not in the presence of my parents, because of course they're not trying to be super rude, but that they wondered, who's the dad? Like, is it really this guy? Is it this? Is that? And then just talking about, oh, her career, she's in the military. What is she going to do now? Because I do have some of those family members who are from the old money, who are well off, who are doctors and nurses and lawyers and engineers and things like that. And they're like, well, what is she going to do? They didn't know that I had any skill sets other than, being stubborn. And oh, it's just the military. She needed a real job. I told her to get a real job. And that hurt a lot. And I didn't say anything out of respect for my parents. And I know that sounds weird, but when my mother needed these specific people, they were there for my mother, no questions asked. So out of respect for my mother, I didn't open my mouth. I just pretended I didn't hear anything. But it was in that moment that I'm like, you need to figure it out. Come hell or high water, you will not give them the satisfaction of you failing.
Yeah.
And that was a huge motivation. But as soon as I finished with school, I looked at Brandon and I went, what if something happens to you? And as soon as I had accomplished what I accomplished, I was like, I'm glad that I did it, regardless of what motivated me to get there. I'm glad I didn't quit in that moment. There's some moments even now where I'm like, but that was the jump start to my survival, or at least the beginning of the survival.
Yeah. You knew you had to prove them wrong. What came next? You went back to school. You had a baby. When did your second one come along? What was the post-Marine Corps work world for you? What came next?
It was non-existent because I was looking at jobs, looking to apply for things, but in the area, because we were still in Camp Lejeune, the contracting jobs would have been with MARSOC. So it's a special forces, if you will. So part of the Marine Corps, special forces. And they were deploying. And it's not that I didn't want to. It was one of those dream jobs that I had wanted so badly. I really did, but I could not bring myself to leave my kid or my husband. And it's not because I didn't have it in me. It's just I already knew how hard it was by myself. And I'm like, not that Brandon couldn't have handled it, but I didn't want to up and leave for 10 months. And what if I never came home? Because it was still very hostile in the area that they were going to send us. Because I was going to do imagery stuff with the MARSOC guys out there. But it was just, it was the what ifs because my life changed. You know, when you're single, it doesn't really matter. Not that you don't value your life, but you're a little bit more reckless. But then I'm looking at this little guy and I'm like, well, you've been my best friend because you're all I had, you know, once I got out of the Marine Corps. And it's not that I didn't have military friends, it's just I like to be really respectful. Most of my military friends were guys, and 90% of them were married. I'm not going to call you to hang out because it's not fair to your wife. The guys that were single, I'm not going to call you to hang out. It's not fair to Brandon. You know what I mean? So I had maybe onesies and twosies, and the girls, I mean, a lot of them got stationed somewhere else. So I had one military spouse that she ended up, actually, she's still one of my really great friends. But outside of her, she was also a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids. I had nobody. So I'm looking at my little best friend. And I'm like, all right, buddy, what are we going to do? And a light bulb came on. All because I wanted a Harry Potter quilt for my son, and I couldn't afford to pay $500 for one on Etsy. One of Brandon's old coworkers, her name is Rebecca, he was like, hey, I think she's got a sewing machine if you want to ask her how to use it. I asked her. This sweet lady let me borrow it, learned how to make my first quilt. And I was like, you could sew. I opened up an Etsy store. One of my best friends, Amira, was my first customer. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And that gave me hope that I could actually do something else because I wasn't able to get any form of an intel job or geospatial job in the area I was in that wasn't involved with military deployments. And that held me over until I found out I was pregnant with my second one, sighed and went, okay, we can do this. And then that's when I learned about postpartum depression. Had no idea. No idea what the heck. Didn't even know that was real. No idea. Culturally, you're told that depression's, you know, just an excuse. They're like, it's an American excuse for things. You're not depressed. And so,
Wow.
yeah, that's all I was working with. Hmm. And yeah, it was a lot. I actually found out because I was training with one of my friends because I was going to run the Disney half marathon with a girlfriend of mine. We were going to go to Florida. We already bought the tickets to go. And I texted her and I'm like, I don't think I can go. She's like, why not? I'm like, because I'm going to be 8 months pregnant by the time we have to do that run. And she goes, oh my God. I'm like, I don't know what happened. She laughed about it. She ran it. It was good. She did great. I offered to go down there, but because it was in Florida, she was really worried about like my health and things like that. Didn't want me to be by myself, which is fantastic. She was a great friend to not be upset at it. I know that it's kind of silly, but some people might have been upset that they were going to go by themselves because it's also non-refundable. But yeah, so in the midst of all that chaos and me trying to figure out what the hell I needed to do, got pregnant with my second one. But I will say, the university that I was going to, it's a small one in Mississippi, and Delta State University, what they do, Mr. Talbot Brooks, he's the head over there for the GIS group. It's fantastic. They specialize in, I say rehabilitating military service members, but they will take military members who are on active duty doing GIS work or military veterans who used to do GIS work, and they gear their program, their degree program, to you and help you get back into more of the federal realm if that's what you wanted to do. And I think that they're the only university that does work for the NGA. So Mr. Brooks was like, hey, do you want a part-time job helping? And I was like, okay. And that's when I was like, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't give up on imagery. Maybe I shouldn't give up on GIS work because this is all happening with the Etsy shop, with the being pregnant, with all this crap. And it was a lot. And I had Brandon looking at me. And do you know what this man said? Do it. Whatever opportunity that you can get, do it. Whatever you need. If you need to go somewhere, he's like, I appreciate you sacrificing everything that you've worked for. He didn't ask me to do it. I did it because I wanted to. And I appreciated the fact that he noticed and was willing to sacrifice whatever he could to help me get back into the career world because I couldn't do it. I was telling me I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. So you went back to the Marines.
Eventually, I went back to working with them. While I was pregnant, we were supposed to go to Quantico, and I had applied for a job there on base, had an interview, and because Uncle Sam does not care about your plans, we ended up getting orders changed to Cleveland. And I was like, the hell is in Ohio? I'd never been to Ohio in my life. Didn't know it was out there. I Googled it, and I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I don't know what the hell we're going to be doing. We're right by a lake. Okay, trying to figure out work there. And I felt like I went back to ground zero because even though I was still doing work remotely for the university, it wasn't as fulfilling. But I needed to slow down a little bit, and I told myself, have this baby, then we'll reconvene. I was like, it's fine, have the baby. I had the baby in December. Brandon needed foot surgery, and he had foot and back surgery like within a couple months of each other. And so I was there with a toddler, a newborn. We had a puppy, which it was for like it, he got me a dog, and it was great. It was a fantastic gesture. Not mad about it. But I had the baby, the toddler, the puppy, the bedridden, literally bedridden husband, and I was finishing up like work, school stuff, and I was like, oh my God. But it was just me.
How
And
did you do it?
I cried a lot. But I did not cry in front of Brandon. And I didn't cry in front of Brandon because it wasn't his fault. He needed it. And I did not want to make that man feel any shittier than he already did. Because the look on his face, like, can I help him? Like, you stay there because I couldn't forgive myself if you got hurt. And I'm like, I am able-bodied. It's fine. I'd help give him a sponge bath. I would help him in the shower when he eventually was able to stand in the shower. Um, and I don't know how I survived that because the postpartum depression started circling again. And it was in those moments where I had to have those honest conversations with myself. I'm like, if you did it, who would take care of your three boys? Because nobody else can take care of them right now. It is just you. And I would sit in the shower and just cry. Cry and cry and cry.
What do you think you needed at that time when you had newborns, when your husband was away at work? What would have made it feel more manageable? What were you missing?
A friend. And I'm not saying that I didn't have friends. I was very grateful to have made some good friends. But I say good friends as in we'd have play dates, but I didn't have anybody that I could just open my heart to in that sense to where there was no judgment, right? So familial issues with like, oh, my parents are saying certain things and maybe they're not intending for it to hurt me, but it's hurting me. I don't know how to navigate this. And I don't know what this depression is. I'm like, I don't know how to differentiate between the PTSD issues and then the postpartum depression. I had no idea. And I'm like, my kid is sick. And then Jameson ended up having RSV for, I think it was lasted almost 4 weeks. It was so hard, but I think having one person I could cry to without judgment would have helped. And I'm not saying my parents are having family, like it's great they came out to visit often and I'm grateful for it, but I just wanted that one person where I could call her and be like, oh my God, come over, and when I could just cry. That's all I wanted.
Yeah. But you were living in different places and didn't necessarily have the say on
Yep.
where you lived and how you lived and who you lived next to. Yeah.
Correct.
You've mentioned a neighbor couple who became like surrogate parents to you. What role did they play with your kids?
So, oh, they were fantastic. So when we were in North Carolina, Debbie and Danny, God love them. Like they were a blessing. They were a true blessing. And when I was going through my bouts of depression, in hindsight now, my postpartum depression, they were a godsend. I walked over one time, knocked on the door, and Debbie's like, hey, honey. And I had the baby, and I had his bouncer, and she's like, uh-oh. She could tell I had been crying. And she's like, I'll text Brandon and let him know that the baby's here. You go do what you need to do. And she gave me a hug and a kiss and took her to this day. She still calls my boys her grandson.
Oh,
Yeah. She's like, let me take my baby. and she would take him. They had everything, that he needed because we always left something over there just in case. And she, of course, has younger grandkids, and they have saved me more than they know. And then when we moved to Ohio, we knew that they were from Toledo, Ohio, so we had lived in Avon. Avon is maybe an hour and a half or so east of Toledo, something like that. My memory's a little fuzzy. But we moved out there, and then I got a call, and Debbie was like, guess who's coming to Ohio? And I was like, what? She's like, Danny and I sold our house. She's like, it wasn't the same without you guys there. And they went back to Toledo. Yeah, so they got to meet they got to meet my second one, and, they still send cards. We still send cards, but without that, because, and not that they wouldn't have helped, but I tried to use them as a last resort because I was trying to respect their privacy, respect their retirement, respect everything about them because they're fantastic people. But they helped me when my parents couldn't. And even my mother, I did catch this little bit of a conversation with her where my mom cried and hugged Debbie, and she's like, I know you're not her mother, but thank you for treating her like your daughter. And my mom just couldn't stop crying. And so it was, sorry, it was just one of the most genuine things coming from my mom, because she's not an emotional person, but I think she felt guilty, but it's not her fault. It's a career choice I chose. It was a life I chose. And so I know it's hard for her because she didn't always have a lot of help. Yeah. They got it where they could, but of course how she raised kids and how we were going through things. But it was nice. It was really nice. And I thank God every day that I had them and still have them to talk to. Sorry.
No, you're making me cry too. I don't even have tissues on my desk. Ugh. Okay, so how old are your boys now?
My oldest is 9.5. And then my youngest is going to be 6-7, is how he says it. Yeah, he's turning 7 at the end of the month, and that's his birthday theme. I'm like, of course. So
I love it. Do you feel like you have survived the young kid phase, which I feel like is the gnarliest just for us moms? Do you feel like you've survived that phase and you're into the next chapters and kind of past the storm?
Yes. In the now, in this very moment, I am a completely different person than I was, I'll say 10 years ago. Different person than I was 10 years ago when I found out I was pregnant and all those things. And I'm very grateful for growth. I'm grateful for everything that I'd worked for and how hard that I worked to get here. I'm trying to use the word I more often because there have been so many times where Brandon's like, remember, you did this. It's like, we did certain things, but you made these accomplishments. So it's been very hard to give myself some grace. But I will say the one thing that I do regret and that I hate, and I know it's just life, is that I feel like I was robbed, and that I robbed my oldest child of the nurturing that I've given to my youngest. And not because I have favorites, it's just because I was in survival mode. And I was in survival mode for so long that I look at my very responsible son, who is very in tune with emotions. He can read my face, and when he sees it, he goes, Mommy's in a bad mood, or she looks like she needs a hug or something. But he will see it, and then he'll look to his brother and be like, hey, I'll get you a glass of water, or I'll make you some toast and white cheese, the cream cheese. Like, yeah, I'll do it for you. And it didn't register until maybe a year ago, because I was watching the dynamic, and I'm like, oh my gosh, should I do that? Because I was going through so much as he was growing up, that he's been so in tune with how I handle things, or maybe not handle things well, that he's taking it upon himself. So that is the only thing that I will probably regret forever, is not being more present, just because I was young and I was trying to find things out, but it was also not fair to him, overall. And so that's the only thing.
I will tell you, it could just be part of him being an oldest child. And you may not have to keep that guilt for the rest of your life. I mean, my oldest does that for my youngest, and she can also read every emotion on my face. Now, I could also blame myself and say, I wasn't home enough when she was little. She went to daycare at 12 weeks. there were things that I could regret in those moments. I always tell her, though, that me sending her to daycare at 12 weeks meant that I could afford to buy her a horse. And I'm always like, was it worth it? And she's like, yep. So I just think that you could let go of that guilt if you wanted to by just acknowledging that the eldest children definitely learn how to tune in and figure out how to read the room a little bit better, you know?
You're not wrong. I am an oldest child. It's different when you put into that perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like your story is one of the most resilient, and your path has so many twists and turns and unexpected speed bumps that you really learned and adapted and survived. And I'm so happy to have met you and to understand how your story, like you made it through the trenches to the next chapter of your career, to the next chapter of your life with two young boys. Do you feel at peace with where your life's at now, or do you still find yourself striving for what's next or what's more?
I think I can honestly say that I'm at peace because of the amount that we've sacrificed as a family to get where we are. I'm okay with it. And I don't want more as far as like, yes, everybody wants a nicer house. They want this and that. It's not that. I just want to make sure that when I'm no longer here, that the boys have something. And I think that Brandon and I have accomplished that. And especially being as young as we are and having accomplished as much as we have in all the lifetimes we've lived, I'm okay. And it sounds morbid, but in the event that I died tomorrow, I would be very happy with the life I've lived, the woman I've turned into, and knowing that at the end of the day, the boys understand the sacrifices we made and why we made them. And they're not mad about it. They love us. We did, like, I gave them an option. Hey, because her dad retired from the military in April. I was like, where do you want to go? Do you want to stay here? Do you want to go to California? What do you want to do? My oldest looks at me and he goes, Mommy, I made friends here. Can we stay? And I smiled and I was like, yeah. And it made me happy because they're so well adjusted here, and they're so well adjusted to the dynamic. And my parents are great. They come out often. My sister comes out often. My brother will come out. We FaceTime and call all the time. My parents are very present. And I think that we've all grown. And so I'm very content and I'm grateful for everybody that did believe in me these last 10 years. They didn't quit. The times that I had a breakdown, when I was back home or when we had friends visiting and I just couldn't hold it in anymore, even strangers. I had a stranger at a grocery store one day and I basically were pinching pennies a little bit for formula at one point in my life. And she looked at me. She didn't ask for anything. She just said that it looked like I needed a hug. An older lady, could have been around my mother's age, if not a little bit older. And that hug did a lot for me. Because somebody saw me. They saw the struggle. They didn't need the story. They didn't need the explanation. And so to every single one of those people, like, I am eternally grateful.
Those comments from strangers hit hard sometimes, don't they?
They do, because you don't know why you feel like you deserve them, but they give them to you and you just want to cry your eyes out because you're like, I'm sorry, and you apologize for existing. And all they're doing is they don't want you to apologize for existing. They just want you to know that they see you and that you matter.
Yeah.
It was nice to be reminded that I mattered.
What has the most joyful part of being a mother and building a career been for you?
Oh gosh. I like the fact that my children look at me and go, "You're a boss?" And not for anything like it. I don't talk about what I do. Like I don't care. When I was a GIS manager at an engineering firm, I don't care about that. And I think the Marine Corps, the way that they have helped mold leadership, made me not so big-headed about it because I don't care. I just want to make sure that everybody's taken care of and our jobs are done. But having my sons go, my mom's a boss. Oh my gosh, she can do these things. It's nice because they're respectful of women. They see that women can hold really good places in society. They think it's amazing because they're like, oh, dad's a boss. It's different. It's different for dads than it is for moms when they look at you, and the joy that they're like, yeah, that's cool. So that has been really rewarding to have them involved and to understand, like, hey, mommy's in a meeting. Yeah, she's doing boss things. I'm like, that's right, mommy's doing boss things.
I love it. What would you tell your younger self when you were pregnant with a knee injury?
Not to quit, and that you will regain the confidence that you lost, that you will look at yourself in the mirror one day and not think that you're ugly, not think that you're worthless, not think that you look like a cow. And I know that sounds very superficial, but I had never experienced certain things like that just because my lifestyle was always very active, and I hated who I was for a solid 3.5, 4 years. I hated everything. On the exterior, I was smiley, I was proper, I did everything I was supposed to do. On the inside, I was crying and dying, and I quit. I was like, this is it. I was a 27-year-old mom, and I told myself, oh, I can't wear that. I'm a mom now. You know what I mean? Never mind it being like, hey, you're 27 years old. You can totally wear that. Stop it. I would go back and give her a hug and say it'll be okay, that it's going to suck and you're going to cry, but you need it to grow. And if you don't grow, what are you doing?
Last question. If you had to sum up your journey of building a career while raising a family in 3 words, what would those be?
Oh boy. It's hard because there's so many ways that I could phrase it. But for anybody who's listening in whatever space that you're in, from the bottom of my heart, the way that I could explain my entire transition and how I could have failed so many times, the only thing that I can think of in the 3 words is you got this. If I had more people saying you got this, I would, not that I wouldn't be okay, but I think it would have been a little easier.
I love that. Okay, this is probably the most teary I've been in any episode. We started at 8:30 in the morning my time. I'm going to drink a little more coffee, but thank you everyone for listening to this episode of Look Both Ways. If Midori's story resonated with you, please share this episode, leave a review, and subscribe for more conversations about ambition, resilience, and motherhood. And Midori, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and being so vulnerable with what is truly a story of resilience and persistence and evolution, and just so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jenna. It was a sincere pleasure.